Welcome back to the Low Stick Podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason Retz.
And I'm Eric Dettman.
All right, we've got a great episode here on summer training. But before we get to summer training, I think we have to congratulate the Birds just a little bit on your state championship this last weekend. Congratulations. What an awesome accomplishment.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pretty amazing weekend, full of forever moments. And I was fortunate enough to win a bunch of cross-country team state titles in high school, but we never got a track and field one. So to finally walk away with one of those was a pretty special feeling.
Yeah, and how magical for it to come down to the 4x4 and come out on top. I mean,
yeah.
I've been in part of that before. When we won our state championship in high school, it came down to the 4x4. I mean, isn't it just a magical feeling?
It is, yeah. And so the last time Lincoln won a state title was in 2007 on the boys' side, and the final score was 55-51. Lincoln, and then a school called West Salem was second. And going into the 4x4, Sheldon had 51. West Salem and Lincoln were tied. So whoever won the 4x4 between the two of us was going to be the winner of the meet. And oddly enough, the final score was 55-51.
Wow.
So kind of crazy. And the 4x4 did not lack for drama. We were about 40 meters back after our second leg. Our third leg, who was the state champion in the 400, ran into the back of a guy who had exchanged and just kind of cut to the inside instead of staying still. And about all that could have gone wrong went wrong outside of us actually walking away with the victory. So it was pretty sweet.
So you held your breath for 3 minutes and 22 seconds is what you're telling me.
I was real stressed. Yeah, I was. I gathered all of our coaches to sit in the same section together, and there was just like a dead silence going into it. And then even during it, and then once we realized like we were going to walk away with the victory, which honestly, 10 meters to go, like there was two teams that were charging hard against our anchor leg, and 10 meters ago, I was still a little bit concerned, but when he crossed that finish line and we knew that we'd won, man, that was some serious elation right there.
Well, that's awesome. You know, I know your staff works very hard, and your kids are phenomenal kids. So that's a well-earned title. So congratulations on it.
Thank you.
All right. So let's dive into our podcast today. We're going to dive into some summer training. Now, this one, we're going to try to give you a little bit of an outline, give you some ideas along the way. But we could go on for hours. So we're going to glaze over a lot of things. So if you've got questions, as always, just send them to us and we'd be happy to help you out. Most of the stuff we've gotten, if you haven't figured this out, we've stolen from other smarter people. So if we don't have the answers, we'll definitely try to help you out, find those as well. So just to kick it off, let's talk about the first couple days after the state meet, which is time off, not only for the athletes, but for the coaches. How do you designate for yourself and for your athletes what kind of time they need before they dive into their summer training?
Yeah, I'm pretty consistent with everybody that I talk to. The first thing I say is congrats on a great season. Now go eat a bunch of hamburgers and drink a bunch of milkshakes. And that's my number one thing. Not that they're not necessarily doing that during the season, but it's just kind of a funny way to remind them to like let loose. It's okay. You guys have been super hyper focused and, striving to achieve personal bests and goals or whatever. Like this is a time to just totally relax and not worry about any of that. So we'll tell our kids 1 week of nothing. For some kids, that'll be 2 weeks of nothing. Some of it's dependent on age and gender and a handful of other things, but at least 1 week. And then after that, it's kind of if you want to go do this, go do this. If you want to go for a bike ride, if you want to go for a hike, if you want to go for a run, go do that. But what we really want to stress to our kids is like when you're coming back, your first day back of like real running, that you're kind of chomping at the bit to do it. Not I got to get out there and I got to go for my run because I got to start this process again. But it's more of like, I'm really excited to run and I really miss it. So how about you?
Yeah, we are very similar. I don't designate time for a lot of kids. I will definitely have a one-on-one and kind of talk them through it. But we are very much like you. When you're ready to come back, come back. For some kids, they got 3 or 4 days and they want to go for a bike ride or get a light run in. I'm okay with that. I come from a program where our head coach at the time had run every day for like 20 years without missing a day. So, I mean, it can be done. Do
Right.
I highly recommend it? No. If you need time, absolutely take it. But I'm okay with the kid that wants to go a week and kind of start back into it, and we'll make their progression according. And I think it's really important, just like you said, they're fired up, ready to train. They're not
Mhm.
there just ready to run, they're ready to train and get after it. And
Yeah.
whatever time that is, I think we're ready for it. So how do you debrief your season in your brain and get yourself excited for cross season?
Yeah, honestly, Jason, that's something I'm still trying to figure out. I don't know that I'm great at it. For us, we have our state meet and the very next week. So this past weekend, we had like another kind of not all comers meet, but a meet in Portland that some of our middle school athletes are competing at, some of our younger, frost soft athletes are competing at. And then next weekend, we go to Nike Outdoor Nationals. And then like essentially a week after that, all of those kids who've been breaking, whether it was after the state meet or after this meet that we had this past weekend, those kids are ready to go again. And I don't do a great job of always just allowing myself to have a break. The way that I kind of rationalize it with myself is like, well, we're only going to meet a few times a week in the summer. So my break is, the Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday that we're not meeting. And that's worked for me. Although I do feel like as a head track and field coach now that like I'm burning, I'm burning that stick a little bit more than I want to going into the cross country season. So it's something I'm still working on. So I wish I had a better answer for you, but that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Yeah, no, I understand completely. I think one of the reasons I'm in this profession is because I'm such a huge fan of the sport. And so for me personally, I enjoy still continuing to go watch track and field.
Right.
We were in St. Louis on Thursday to watch Festival of Miles. We were at Magnus on Saturday to go watch some races. And for me, that's kind of my rejuvenating bit. I enjoy the sport as a fan as much as I do as a coach or even as I was an athlete. And so right now, especially with my son, resetting my gauges, just enjoying the love of the sport because we're in a magical time right now at the end of the season. NCAA's are coming up, state meets are just ending. I'm on the phone on Sunday with coaching friends of mine, asking them questions, and
Mhm.
it's not necessarily a necessity to do that right away, but for me, it's part of the enjoyment of this. It is connecting and talking and continuing to enjoy the sport. So I'm kind of with you in a way. I think people could view my as well as burning both ends, but I just love the sport. I mean, I love
Yeah.
watching Noah Lyles get out there. I mean, all the Portland track festival results. I just love being a part
Mhm.
of the sport. For me, that's my disconnect is just diving back into what everybody else is doing. I think
Sure.
we get very narrow visioned as a coach and don't see the rest of the world sometimes. And when we can have our season over and then look at everybody else, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And similar to kind of what I was talking about with the kids, where like I want them chomping at the bit, ready to go after their break. Like I don't, if I don't want to go to the Portland Track Festival, I don't. But like I think to myself, like I get to do this. I want to do this. I don't have to do this.
Right.
And that's kind of, I guess, maybe how I rationalize it. Like if I don't want to go to something, I just won't. But I'm a big fan of the sport. Like, this sounds silly, man. This meet I was at this past weekend watching 8 and under kids run 100 was one of my highlights of the weekend. When you see 3 kids ending up in one lane and they're looking everywhere but the finish line, and they see their mom, up in
Right.
up in the stands and they're waving. Like that to me, that brings so much enjoyment because it's like a reminder of why we do this. Like at the end of the day, it's just supposed to be so fun. So yeah, it doesn't always feel like work, even though we're still kind of doing that.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, between the 2 meets we went to, I probably had a dozen or more coaches be like, "Hey, who are you here watching?" Or, "Oh, is Lance running?" Like, no, we're just here enjoying the sport. I'm like,
Yeah.
really? Like, yeah, we just love doing this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's really important too, that you're not just coaching to coach, but you're coaching with a purpose, and that purpose is that you love the sport and you want to be a part of it.
All right, so let's dive into after we're back from our break, whatever that predetermined time is, or even on the flex of what that time is.
Yep.
Um, what's a rough progression of your summer gonna look like from start to finish? And let's assume that for most of us, we're talking the beginning of June to the middle of August or end of August being the progression of our summer. What's it look like for you?
For us, it's more early July. Like I'll write out some plans for kids who might be starting a little bit earlier than that. But because we go to Nike Outdoors and, that's going to go up until this year, up until June 18th, they'll take a week or 2 weeks off after that. Like July 2nd is kind of our big start date. And what that looks like is just some easy running with some strides. Like we definitely want to try to run, fast early, but not in the sense of we're trying to like rip Ks or mile repeats or something like that, but just a reintroduction to the body of what it means to turn over. And it's just going to be a lot of training runs early. I'll encourage the kids, if you feel good and you want to do a couple pickups, do it. Like if that feels right, do it. If you want to do your run somewhere a little bit hilly and you run up a hill and you're like, I want to run a little bit faster, I'm okay with that. We try to not have too many standards specifically when it comes to that. But it's more just getting out, running, enjoying that. And if you feel good, let's roll with that. And then as we're kind of progressing, through the month of July, we'll have our team camp. We'll start introducing some more workouts. We'll do some tempo stuff, threshold stuff, early with some rest, kind of broken up into smaller intervals, a lot of fartleks. We have a loop here that I really like. That's about 2.5 miles long. It's a single track trail, and we'll have the kids do one of those. It's kind of a warm up. And then depending on who they are, they might do 1 to 3 more as part of like a hilly fartlek. That's something we really started doing last year that I like. And then progression runs. We do a lot of those in the summer. And that kind of is what gets us ready for the actual cross country season. So nothing special, honestly. Like we don't have secret workouts. We don't have secret plans. It's just trying to build fitness and really enjoy the process while doing it. So how about you?
Yeah, we're very similar. I think to take everything you had, but I think our big focus is that consistency of that volume. During track season, there's so much racing that sometimes our volume may be up, but the consistency of that volume may be a little sporadic at times. And so I think the summer for us is introducing a continuous, long, hard stimulus to the body. One of our good friends likes to say that's an opportunity for kids to level up. And I think that if they take that mentality and they're consistent with their training, that is a great opportunity for them to level up on what they've done. They can add additional things that they haven't in the past. They can stretch that long run out another 10 minutes if they're following the guidelines we shoot at them. But yeah, it's definitely a time for them to be consistent. So where are you starting your kids? So let's just start at the top. Let's just do 2 levels. Let's say an incoming freshman and maybe an upperclassman, junior or senior. What's their beginning summer volume going to look like, assuming that they ran track season?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if it's a lower level incoming kid, if they had a track and field season, some of it's dependent on what that looked like. So we've got some kids who are brand new, who were like 15 miles a week kind of guys. And they would, on workout days, they'd work out with us. And on other days, they would go with the jumpers or they'd go with the shot putters or whatever it might be. So those kids, we're going to start pretty low. Like we'll encourage them to come 3 days a week, because that's our first couple of weeks are just 3 days a week. But we're really trying to focus on helping them really and truly develop a love for running. And I think this summer is the perfect time for a high school student to develop that kind of love and that passion, because there's a lot of fun with racing in the fall. There's a lot of fun with racing in the spring. But those are also really stressful times, especially for younger kids who are maybe adding this new stimulus to their life that they've never experienced. The winter, depending on where you live in the country, is not the most ideal time. It's cold, it's wet, it's rainy, it's whatever. But the summer, the weather is perfect. You don't have school. There's no other stressors. You're just kind of living life. Like, I think that's the perfect time and where we really see our kids, to your point, leveling up and falling in love with the sport. So that's what we're really trying to encourage with some of those kids. And we'll start slow. It might be 10 or 15 miles, and let's get them up to 18 and then 21. And if we can get them up to 30 miles per week by the end of the summer, like I consider that a pretty successful summer for some of those kids.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And for our older kids, I've asked this question myself a number of times. It's like, where do you start? And kind of one of my mentors, especially in my early coaching career, but even still to this day, Dave Frank, who's at Central Catholic, his big thing is 65% of their max volume from the previous season. And that's where they can start. So that's around where we'll start. If that feels like a lot for some of our kids, they'll start a little bit lower, but then we'll just progress a little bit quicker. Like we won't necessarily follow the 10% rule. We'll progress a little bit quicker, but we will certainly add in some down weeks just to allow the body to recover and make sure that we can stay as injury free as possible. So it's obviously a little bit different on both sides, but first and foremost, fall in love with running and try to stay injury free. Those are kind of our two big things. So how about you?
Yeah, I would say with our younger kids, we're very similar. I'm trying to get them just to get out the door 6 days a week, even if that's one of those days they're doing barefoot strides or wickets, or playing a game of ultimate frisbee with their friends or with ball with their friends, right? Just trying to get them to be active 6 days a week. And I think that coming in based on what they did and how active they were on their break is going to really determine. We've had some kids, and you may come across this when they are coming back off their break. If they've been very inactive with what they're doing, some of their joints are going to be a little sore. Those tissue things are going to be a little delicate. And as much as sometimes you don't want to believe it, those kids are sore, and you really got to be careful with what you're giving them so that they can acclimate themselves correctly. And so I think that we base how much for those younger kids coming back based on how their body is feeling. I think if we can get them out the door 4 days a week at 30 minutes tops, and then just doing something another 3 days a week, that's great. That'd be absolutely perfect.
Yeah. And I think those kids wanting to go do that is a big part of it too, right? Not just like, oh, coach told me I've got to go out for a run today, but like them making that decision on a consistent basis to get out the door and do it, I think is awesome.
Yeah. And our upperclassmen, at this point, their empowerment's at the point where they kind of know where they need to be, and they need to take the time in order to get to that goal. And most of them within 2 or 3 weeks will get there. Some people are closer to 50% at the beginning. Some people maybe close to 70, 75% of their total volume. It just depends how active they were during their time off. Some people went on vacation and they were hiking the whole time, or they were on their feet. Well, their acclimation back to running is going to be different than a person who just sat on the couch and watched TV the entire time. So I really give them the freedom and feeling out like, hey, by week 3, this is kind of the volume we want to be at, but just feel it out till you get there. And that's worked pretty well with us in years past. And honestly, within week 2, some kids are already there, ready to go. It really depends on that individual and what they've been doing on their own in order to get there. All right. So we got a little bit of volume figured out where you're going to start your kids. Okay. So let me ask you this, as you build to your progression, what type of overall volume are you kind of looking for out of some of your kids? Are you looking for an in-season volume? Is it a little higher? Is it progression rate? What does it look like for you? And along with that, what do the intensities look like during that time?
Yeah, it's interesting, and some of it's kid by kid, but I would say that there's a standard-ish within our program. For our top boys, it's probably about 55 to 60. We've had some kids who have gone longer than that, and more than that. But I would say that the standard with kind of our varsity level juniors and seniors is about that 55 to 60 range. We've entertained the idea of going higher, and like I said, I've got a couple of kids who have done that, but that just seems to have worked for us in terms of staying injury free, but also allowing us to run at a level that we're competitive and we want to run at. Our girls are lower, and it's something I've wrestled with and I've thought about and talked with some of our assistant coaches with, but like our top girls this year, juniors and seniors, and some of them are, have had success at the state national level. Like they're maxed out at 35 miles a week in the summer. And I think we can go a little bit higher than that and still be safe. And that's not to say that, I've got a good incoming freshman and I'm going to have her run 40 miles a week or something like that. But by the time they're juniors and seniors, I think we can creep up a little bit more to that like 40 mile per week range. So that would be like their max. And that's what we would hold the end of the summer into the first couple of weeks of the season. And then naturally, as we start racing more, or as, different stimuluses come up, they're going to come down a little bit, but that's kind of what my plan is, boys, 60, girls, top girls, somewhere around 40. So still trying to figure that out. But that 35 numbers has been pretty successful for us so far.
Yeah. And I would agree. I think, overall to this point, that's kind of been the range of some of ours. There's always some outliers that have gone a little bit more on the girls' end, especially But I also think that when people are examining their volume, they need to look at how many runs per week that they're getting in. Some people during the summer are doing some doubles, and so there's some sneaky miles in there. I mean, I always joke about this with other people. Just knowing you personally, they talk about York's volume, and I go, look, there's a good chunk of that is playing
Yeah.
ultimate frisbee,
Yep.
So I think that depending on what it looks like for us, we ask our upperclassmen especially to get at least 2 doubles in a week. And so if we're talking about their primaries getting 60 miles or about 6 hours worth of volume, they're going to sneak in another 6 to 8 miles in easy on top of that. So, some of their volumes may float up closer to 70, 75 miles, but it's not in singles, right? And I think
Right.
it's a big way to look at it when you're examining what you're doing. Are you giving enough rest? Doubles can be a great thing, but if you're not providing enough rest or you're not structuring them the correct way, they can be very harmful to your program.
Right.
I've seen them happen both ways. A good friend of ours, Timo Moster, they are 5 days a week, just easy 30-minute runs. And I really think that there's a lot of value to that if they're recovering, having fun, enjoying what they're doing. If they're
Yeah.
doubling and it's hot, it's 90 degrees when they run in the morning, it's 90 degrees when they run at night. When are you ever recovering?
Right.
So I think there's a lot of factors there when you're looking at your overall volume. You can't listen to someone's number and go, oh, shoot, they're running 80 miles a week, and then go expect your kids to run 12 miles every time they walk out the door. It's just not
Right.
going to happen.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And to your point of like how you're doing it, I think is so important, because we've seen kids in the past in our era who are going out and just hammering 80 miles a week. And then come the season itself, like they're fried because it's just too much. But I think as long as you're really smart about it, you're smart about your buildup, you're smart about listening to your body. There's a lot of different paths to get to the top of the mountain. And whether that's 80 miles for you and 20 miles for that person, or, we had a kid a couple of years ago, Mateo Althouse, like he was a 55 mile a week guy, and he would supplement everything else on the bike. He would be riding 6 hours a week.
Yeah.
And he ended up being pretty successful. So I think it's just finding what works for you, what works for your athlete, having those conversations. What do you want to do? What are you hoping to accomplish? How are we going to get there? Like that's a big piece to trying to build that summer plan out with them.
And I would encourage you this as a coach, if you have an athlete that wants to supplement in the pool or on the bike, let them. Because you're non-weight bearing, if you're not seeing a negative side effect to their running, that is a tremendous stimulus. And there are very few kids that want to do that or enjoy doing that. So if they want to do it, I would say, work with them, but let them do it.
Well, yeah,
downside.
We had a girl this year who junior year, first year running, and we realized right away that she could not handle volume. Not because there's anything wrong with her, but she was her first year running.
Yeah.
And she, basically worked out with us, ran on the ground once a week, and then everything else was on the bike. And she ended up 21st or 22nd at the state meet, something like that. And her first ever, and she was a girl who her first 5K ever, I think she ran, it was good. She ran like 2040 or something like that. But she ended up being a 19 flat girl who was 21st or 22nd. So don't be afraid, again, coaches, like don't be afraid of cross training. That is not going to negatively impact your student athlete to the point where they won't be able to compete at the level that you want them to. And in some cases, Parker Volby's a great example. Like you can be highly, highly successful doing the majority of your training with cross training. There was a gal that I dated while I was at Oregon who, she ran twice a week and she swam the majority of her other workouts. And she was an All-American and school record holder in the steeplechase. Like cross training is a beautiful tool. And to your point, is something that can keep us super duper healthy.
Yeah. If they're in on it, I would say let them do it. And sometimes as coaches, we feel like, they're not running, they're not getting it done. But if they're invested in that cross training, they're getting it done. Don't worry about that.
Right. How do you, so talking about building mileage and stuff like that, how do you go about tracking all that? Are you guys Strava people? Are your kids just, they're telling you what they're doing on a daily basis? What does that look like?
So we have a website that has an online training log that I encourage them to use. Post-COVID, some of them struggle a little bit more to just take that as a priority. But, I really encourage them to put down a variety of things just simply because it helps us help them a little bit better. I say, if you struggle with that, hop on Strava, try to get Strava done. trying to get anywhere way for them to reflect, because I really think it's important to show them empowerment. I want to see what they're doing, but at the end of the day, really, it's to help them develop as people and to develop into a better runner, right? We're here to try to go faster.
Right.
Obviously, all those other things. But if I'm looking at the data and your heart rate on your run is 200 every time, all right, we need to probably back it down, or there's something going on. So having that data as a coach, we're literally trained to be able to help kids with those types of problems. And if I can see that data, I can better help you. If I can't see it, I don't know there's a problem there. So yes, we try to get them to log in a variety of different ways if possible. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. What about you?
Yeah, so we're Strava users. We created a club or a group, whatever it's called, on Strava, and that's my way of connecting with the kids and seeing what they're doing. I'm a fan of it. I'm a big fan of it, I should say. We haven't used it to its fullest extent. Like, it's been an optional piece, but I think moving forward, it's to become more of a mandatory piece if you want to be kind of a contributing member of the team. Just for a variety of reasons. One, because I think that there's a self-confidence that comes with, I'm going to look back at week after week after week. In the last 6 weeks, I ran 40 miles a week. And I'm super proud of myself that I was able to maintain that level of consistency. It's not that I averaged 40 miles a week and was running 6-minute miles, or that I crushed these workouts. I think it's more the consistency of doing it and making a decision every day to do it. I think that there's a lot of confidence to be gained in high school students from that. One of my favorite things to do on Sundays is I take a look at our Strava groups, and I look and I see, like, this freshman girl ran 22 miles, and that's the most she's ever run. And I'll send her a message like, hey, I'm really proud of you. You ran 22 miles. How do you feel?
Right.
And then we can make a plan, the next week. But it's really exciting how excited these kids get with themselves and how proud they are of themselves to continue to make some of this progress. So I think it's a really valuable tool. I know it can be troublesome. I know that there's comparison, there's things like that. We've got kids who struggle with that as well. We just encourage them, make it private, and your only follower is me. Nobody else can see what you're doing except for me. And that's kind of helped. Or, my number one boy is funny. He doesn't love putting stuff on Strava. So he'll say he did 8 miles and it took him 4 hours. And I don't really care what the pace is, because I know what he's running. I see him enough times, but that's his way of, not necessarily showing what he's doing.
Yeah. And I think that, sometimes the freshmen, sophomore, juniors don't see that the same way, but then we'll have kids that go back to their logs, like, the night before state, they're like, I went back to my freshman log and I looked like, man, I really didn't put any information in there compared to what I did when I was older. And, there's a note section for them where they can fill things out and kind of keep me updated on what's going on as a form of communication, but also a little self-reflection for them, which I think is super important. I mean, just as people moving forward, to be able to self-reflect correctly.
Yeah. Well, and even, I think back to, like, I think as coaches, we're more dialed in on the day-to-day and how they're feeling and how they respond to certain things, right? Like, before X Tuesday before, like, they don't remember that, but we do. And maybe they had a poor workout the Tuesday before the state meet. Well, hey, last time you did this, take a look at it. You were just fine at the meet.
Yeah.
And I think it can be a valuable tool in that sense of just creating confidence and being able to look back and realize it's not one singular day that's going to define what's going to happen at this, this conclusion meet. It's this body of work over the course of, 8, 12, 16, whatever weeks. And I think it can be a really helpful tool from that standpoint.
Right. And all those things can bring the variance down, right?
Right.
The higher that daily level can be, the smaller the variance when we look at the state meet. Your bad meet at a state meet may be 10 seconds off your best or 15 seconds off your best.
Right.
Instead of 2 minutes. There's a huge difference there. All right.
Absolutely.
So what do you do with kids who are interested in racing consistently during the summer? Sometimes our overexcited kids that come in, overexcited is not the correct word to use, but just enthusiasts of the sport. What do you do? How do you advise them on time trials or racing, or what do you do for them?
Yeah, I'll be honest, we try to dispel that. If some kid wants to do some type of race, like, I don't want to take away that fun. And a lot of us grew up running 5Ks, and we have fond memories of doing that with our families or doing that with our friends or whatever. I don't want to get rid of that. But what I don't want to have happen is every week I'm going to go out and run a 5K, or really even every other week. We do 2 time trials over the course of our summer, and those are just more of where are we at. And for some of our kids, it's kind of a wake up call of like, oh, I thought I was here and now I'm there kind of thing. So it can be a bit of a wake up call for those kids. But I think that it's a helpful tool for us to use within our program. But I don't know that I necessarily want kids to go out and run a bunch of 5Ks or 10Ks or something like that.
Yeah, I will do the same. I will encourage kids, if they're doing something with their family, like, hey, go run with your mom or go start in last place and just enjoy the atmosphere of the race.
Right.
Just be in the race. Don't take it as a workout. Just go have fun. We'll have some designated times. At the end of July, we have our 5K in town where we get our initial numbers off of workouts to start the year, which is awesome for us. So don't go out of your way to go race every weekend, but have some fun along the way.
Right.
So you and I both have a tendency to run some summer camps or do some summer camps throughout the course of the year. I think they can be great at building team atmospheres. I've done it a variety of different ways, from just one day type of activities to an entire week. What do you do? What do you think the benefits of having some type of team camp are?
Yeah, without diving too much into it, because I feel like this could be an episode on its own. For us, it's been vital to not only build community and relationships within our team, but also to build commitment within our program. So when I first came to Lincoln, there was a couple things. One, we were only taking like our top 7 girls and our top 7 boys. And I began to think as we evolved our summer camp of like, how often are those 7 the 7 that end up running at the state meet? But what I loved from that experience was when I first got there, it didn't feel like the guys in the gals program was that close. Then we did a camp, we came back, these guys and gals became close, and the friends to the girls who didn't go to camp become friends with the guys who did go to camp, and that just kind of ballooned, and it helped create this really awesome environment. And now, I think this year we're at like 51 or 52 kids. We do our camp with a couple of other local Portland area high schools. But what's great about it is I want number 50 to be best friends with number 1, because if those two are close, that just creates an even more unreal bond amongst our team. And number 1's going to feel that much more inspired by what number 50 is doing. And number 50 is going to feel that much more inspired by number 1 because of that relationship. That's a big piece. So there's a lot of different games and fun activities and things that we do. We have a lot of conversations around team, and we have some really open and honest conversations. We do this thing called the Brave Deck, which is probably my favorite thing. And it's 52 cards that are just asking really challenging, hard questions. It might be things like, what made you most disappointed in your life, and how were you able to overcome that? Or how did you respond to that moment? It's stuff like that. And to listen to the things that, these 15, 16, 17-year-old kids are talking about and talking about with their peers, you could just see these connections forming. And that's not even the running part. That's all the other stuff that I think makes our team so special. And then from a running perspective, it's beautiful. We run in this, on the coast of Oregon, and these beautiful trails and dirt roads, and yeah, it couldn't be better. I know that you do a couple of different variations, and you mentioned this, single day, week long. Do you have a preference? Do you have a thought around like, I like this more or that more? Or is it really team dependent?
No, it really is team dependent. I mean, last year we invited families to participate as well, and I really enjoyed that, including more community into it. I've brought in guest speakers. We've gone to the State Fire Academy, and they went through State Fire Academy there. I brought in the SWAT team. We literally had one of our kids kidnapped one year, and nobody on the team other than the coaches knew it was going to happen. And we set up the scenario. One of my former athletes from another school came and kidnapped her. She knew she was getting kidnapped. So did her family. So did 911. So we'd taken their phones, so there was no emergency dials. But we've done a variety of things to put them in stressful situations to see how they respond. And I think that's worked really well, just depending on how the group is and what we do along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think there's a lot of value. If there's one thing I could encourage coaches to do, it would be to do a summer camp.
Yeah. And even if you're spending an evening with the group and the families sitting down, creating goals. Team camp is not about the running. Team camp is about everything else. And I think that's the important thing to remember if you're considering a team camp. All right. So
sorry, I know we're running up on our time, but that I think is such an awesome idea that I've never thought about, that I think everybody should think about. Is like, you're sitting down and setting goals with your kids, but include the families there too, because those are going to the people, at home are going to help to make that happen. If we're setting goals and our parents know, like, 9:30 p.m. we got to be winding down, putting our phones away, going to bed. Like, I've never thought about that, but I'm literally making a note right now, Jason, because I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, last year when they set goals, I didn't even sit in the meeting. It was their parents and them that sat together. And I didn't want to be a voice in that. I just wanted to be an ear. And that was really good to do it that way. So it's definitely fun. And even if your parents aren't there, I think it's important that those kids communicate what their goals are, whether that be through a sheet you can mail home or whatever it is. I think it's important because they're your biggest support system, right, for those kids at home. All right, so we're kind of winding down a little bit. I think that we can both some of the things we do similar, or we agree on, is that the first day of your actual cross country season is about the 80th day of cross country. You have to take advantage of the summer. If I'm comparing the two, I would say that June is similar to December and July is similar to January as far as comparing the track and cross country seasons together. I can't imagine where we would be if we didn't have January as a track team. So I think it's important, or training through those cycles, right? I think it's important that you're doing something there. Structure of the coaches, you've got to find your sweet spot, right? If you're going to be there every day, if you're going to be there once a week, whatever that is, whatever refreshes your battery, I think that's super important. And I would not take our advice. We probably bad advice unless you're in love with the sport the way we are, right? I think you got to have some separation time, some family time. Super important. Probably agree on that.
Sure do. Yep.
It just happens to be that some of our best friends and people are in the sport. And so we go watch other kids and we're supporting our friends along the way. So that's very helpful there. But if your wife doesn't want you to go, sometimes don't go. That's piece number one. All right. If you're getting out training, get it done, right? You can set the structure. Don't be afraid to get your long run in. Don't be afraid to give some workouts along the way. But I think you'd agree, be sensitive to your kids along the way there.
Yep, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Check in with them consistently, especially your new kids who are still trying to figure this whole thing out.
Yeah. And I think you said it really well. Find the love of running. If you can do that during the summer, it's going to set your season up really well. Don't be afraid to have water balloon toss and go jump in the pond with the kids, that kind of thing. Enjoy it. This is your time to be a fan and a coach of somebody training almost like a pro. They don't have to go to school.
Yeah.
All right. So we had to fly through the end of that, which is okay. But what we do want to do is we want to spend some time setting up what your season potentially could look like. And we've got a couple of things on deck, but in July, because of all the excitement with pros and college wrapping up, July, we want to talk about track and field and being fans. As you can tell, we're both just big fans of the sport. So we want to spend a lot of time talking about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you a bonus episode, a freebie on setting up your season. I think it's important. I mean, there are things that you got to think about now. Just like last time we talked about postseason, setting that stuff up early. You got to set up your season now if you haven't already started doing it. So we're going to try to get that out to you soon as well. I think we are just about in the last 10 seconds of this thing, according to Zoom on me, but it's been good talking about summer. If you got questions, please make sure you ask, share, like, subscribe, all those fun things you're supposed to do to us. And until then, we will see you next time on the Low Stick Podcast.
Thanks for your time, everybody.